create them, how they work, and a few details about NPCs that may be confusing because I've expanded it a lot and I think it's important that we go over the details. So let's look at NPCs. What is the difference between an NPC and a PC, or an NPC on the NPC screen? If we look at the players, we'll notice that on the inventory manager, we have settings that say these are characters. Well, we can also set these to NPCs. So this is an NPC, and these are meant to be in-party NPCs, ones that stick around and are playable, or maybe a player shows up and they're going to play, so you give them that NPC to play. And the difference is they're going to show up on this screen over here as NPCs, so they appear to be players. Minor NPCs are NPCs that show up on the NPC screen here. And these are special in that they also show up on the player screen. Let's create an NPC and see what they look like. First page of the NPC creator asks a couple of questions. Should we provide this NPC with initial equipment? And the answer is usually yes, because that'll give them some stuff that makes them seem like a real character. Don't pre-fill the reputation and don't make him a combat character. If you check that, it won't give them a reputation and will give them less combat-y stuff. For now, we'll do that. Armor style. Apocalyptic combat armor is armors, chest plates, helmets, gloves, that kind of stuff. Pre-apocalypse clothing is jeans, t-shirt, hoodie, that kind of stuff. The idea being that some games are pre-apocalyptic, or some towns, the people aren't going to be dressed in armor, they're going to be dressed in clothing. So that's the clothing setting. And then the last one is the runeware. I created that for a game I'm currently running where the people mostly cobble together clothes that they're going to wear. So it's not really, you don't have a nice pair of jeans, you just have jeans, and then maybe they're improvised plastics or something, who knows. It's just going to be crappy clothing. So for this one, we're going to do pre-apocalyptic clothing. Then you can give them a gun. If you give them a pistol or a rifle, they will have the appropriate skill for it. 75% of the time they'll be okay with it, and 25% of the time they'll be an expert. You can always change that later, though. We'll go through that. What is their attribute settings? An average character in Aftermath has a wit, will, strength of 8. For a player character, that seems a little bit low. So we're going to set these to 8 to 15, which is slightly less than an NPC would and a PC would have, but higher than a player character. And then, of course, you can also make them player character level, which would be 13 to 18 in each, group 3 for most. Wit, strength, and deftness are definitely high. Will and speed are more in line with what a player character might have. So for this one, we're going to do superior. Now, this doesn't affect their skills. This just affects their attributes. Then you can pick, do you want the traditional jobs, modern jobs, bus driver, accountant? Do you want apocalyptic, armorer, trader, that kind of stuff? Or just want to see them all? For now, we'll just say all. And then you can also get a list of alternate NPCs. So if you have created a character in the character creator and you want to import them, and let's say their name was Bob, you just put Bob in there and then it'll show you all the Bobs that are on the list. That way you can import a character really easily. But for now, we're just going to use one of the presets, so we won't put anything in there. There are presets that are here, and these are basically the characters that I've created or other people have created that are good. Like here's a guy that does a slingshot. This is what I imagine a military officer would look like. This guy has laser technology. This guy's a hunter. This one has high speed, that kind of stuff. So you pick one of these that seem like what you're looking for, and we're going to use this one. Not that one. We're going to use this one here, young PA person, which is like a person who has skills for the apocalypse, but not highly skilled in anything. And we'll adjust that later. And then we're going to make this person a raider, just for general purpose. We're making them a little taller because they're apparently a man. And we're going to make them average looking. 35 years old, they have a mohawk and their hair color is black. The hair colors are broken into natural colors and artificial colors. Doesn't matter what you use. Then you can have reputation, and you can put in, swordman or whatever whatever you want to put. You can get their how they appear to act, and this is what other people think of them. They're humorous, they're hostile, they're hospitable, they're horrible, they're hormonal, they're helpless. And then their general outlook: pessimistic, optimistic, pragmatic, and what other people would describe them as. So this person is hopeless. They act hopeless, but how do people feel about them? Are they loyal? Are they lovable? Are they loud? Are they lazy, laid back? You just pick whatever you want. And if you need to get a definition of those, there's definitions. Then set their intelligence. Their attributes, these are the ones that are generated from the level that we picked. But we're going to make this guy, since they're a raider, we're going to make him strength 15 and deafness 15. And then you can put in any notes you want. This is test NPC or whatever. Short notes are searchable fields so that players can search for things, like if they're from a specific town or whatever, you can put that town name there. And then loyalty and morality, depending on if you're using that. If you're not using that, you can just leave those as 10. The relationship to the party: are they neutral? Are they a provider? Are they an enemy? Are they unknown? Should they be on the list or not, visible to the players? And what zone are they in? So we're going to make this river's end. Once we have that all set, we just save it, and it automatically generates a character. And there's the character, early friends. And there's your notes, your test NPC. They're hopeless, they're a raider, they're age 35, they're neutral to the party. They have a full character sheet, so you can have a full character sheet of information. And this is all editable. So let's go ahead and check out their inventory. They have a full inventory. We gave them a rifle. It's not a very good rifle, but it's a rifle. They have a hockey stick spear and a crowbar. And they have general gear. Now the general gear is derived from a list, and it's supposed to be fairly intelligent. They've got a sleeping bag, a pocket knife, a pipe wrench, things that an aftermath person might have in their possession, and usually some supplies. They have some caffeine, they have some packaged food, they've got some plastics that they can use to create something or trade, and that's them. That's their character. So if we go back to the NPC list, we can edit this character in several different ways. First, all of the information about them is editable on this page, and this is basically everything that the GM would have. So all that's editable. So let's go back and look what the player sees on this. So we go to players and NPC list. This is the player's NPC list. They see the armor that the character is wearing, because obviously they can just look at them and see what armor they're wearing. So they can see the armor. They know that the guy's got a gun and two weapons, but they don't know of his inventory. They can't see in his backpack unless they have X-ray vision. That can be turned on the other screen. You can allow people to see their inventory. Friendlies, obviously friendly people, you'd know what their inventory was. You can edit information about them. And this is the player editor, so it allows them to change the notes and the player notes, their job and their relationship to the party. If a player wants to say, well, this is not really a raider, they're a hat maker, if you can spell hat maker, they could be hat maker, and then the player could save that. And that would be information that the players would have access to. They can change their notes. They can add player notes if they want, and those can be quite long. And then the players don't know everything about this guy. They know his reputation, and they know what he's like. And if they don't know what pessimistic means, they can click on it, and it'll take them to Google and define pessimistic. Then they know their skills. And this is the top skills that the characters have: rifle, survival, culture, pre-rune, high-tech use, surge urban, tech use, and automobile driving. This gives the players an idea of who this person is. Clearly, they use rifles. And remember, we made this guy a raider, so yeah, they're very good with a rifle. So that's a little bit of information for the players. Now, if we go back to the GM screen, we can allow them to see they're black, so they're visible, and the inventory is black, so it's not available. But we've changed that over to green, and we go back to the players list. the players list will now show their inventory rather than their armor. So they have full access to the inventory just like a regular player. So they can take things or add things to the inventory, basically everything they have. So we're going to lock that. They don't have access to the PDF. They don't have access to the editor, but they do have a lot of access. Now, the editor itself, this editor, or this list is just the basic information. You can edit some stuff from here, but you can also edit the stats by editing the editable stats. Go here, and then you can edit stats and skills. That gives you more stuff. You can edit their attributes if you want, add size, bulk, all that good stuff. But what we're going to look at is the skills. So you can edit, go to edit stats. This gives you the basic stats for the player, and then you can edit skills by list. And this editor allows you to change skills very quickly. For example, oh, he's not an electrician, so we'll take that off. He knows fermentation, so we'll give him a 25 in fermentation. And you can change any skill that you want from this list really quickly, so that any skill you want to add or take away can be saved. And this includes non-canon skills that are from technology and other places, like cybernetic design, dodge missiles. I don't use a lot of these skills. The one I do use on this list a lot, though, is astronomy. They have astronomy, which is nice. I give that to NPCs who are astronomers. It's quite helpful. Some of the other stuff might be mining or forgery. You know, if you need that in your campaign, you can always give NPCs those things. But I try not to let the player characters use those extra skills because I think it does dilute their characters a lot. And then you can change the overall size on the character. Now let's save this. And now I'm going to show you something that's interesting about NPCs. By the way, in between characters and NPCs is a thing called hidden. They will not appear on the list anymore when they're hidden. I do this when a player doesn't show up. I just hide them so they're not listed everywhere. And we'll turn them back to a character. And you can also block inventory for specific characters if you want. For example, players won't be able to see this character's inventory or manipulate it. They can still give them things, they just can't take them back. Okay, so now that we've got that taken care of, let's talk about how to manipulate an NPC. This is an NPC, and he's on the non-player character list. But let's say that for some reason we wanted to move this character over and make them a player character. So we can go to the editor, and on the editor it has status, and the status is NPC. We can make him a full-fledged player character if we want by hitting save here. And then when we go back to our thing, now he's a full-fledged character. Now obviously his inventory is locked because we haven't unlocked it, but this is a full-fledged character. So if you need a temporary character for a guest player, or just somebody who's shown up for the first time, you can promote an NPC up to be a player. And this is a full-scale player. They can log in as a player now. And then when you're done with that, you can go back and put them back into NPC status so they're NPCs again. And they disappear from that list and they show up on your NPC list. And this makes it really good because you can do a lot of things with a portable NPC. And once they're switched over to a PC, they're fully PC'd, and then when they switch back to an NPC, they're fully an NPC. And of course, NPCs can also roll, and they have all their things. And of course, they have learning by doing, although I don't use learning by doing for NPCs so much, but you can do learning by doing if you want. So that's how NPCs work. Now, if you have a character on the character list existing characters, let's say Charles Remus is a character that you've created for standard Aftermath with a character generator. But now you realize, oh, I should have made that character a NPC in the game. So you can go to your NPC list. You can add an NPC and then just put Charles Remus down here. Well, I should have cut and pasted it, but okay. Then you go ahead and click there. And now, under the presets, will be Charlie Remus. Now you can import Charlie Remus, whatever you want to call him. Let's say he's a police person. And of course, you make his name Charles Remus, give him his appropriate height and size, whatever you want to give him. I don't know what age group he was. I should have looked, but I didn't bother. I can't look in the presets here. These are only the presets. They don't show us the characters. But if I were to look, I could get all that information. And then because he's going to be an NPC who's new to the game, we just give him no reputation. And then we hit save. Now, Charles, oh, by the way, when you do a new character import, it always puts it up here. So you can hit clear to get rid of that. And it'll show you all your NPCs. But when you add a new one, it always blocks out just that one so you can see it. And if we look at the PDF, here's Charles Remus's PDF. Now this is the way it was generated, the way the character was generated, and except these attributes are randomized. So if you want to create the exact character of Charlie Remus, you're going to need to go to your list existing characters for this Charles Remus. I mean, there's his numbers, right? 25, 20, 20, 15, 19. So you can take these attributes and now apply them to your Charles character under your attributes. And let's see, what was that? 25, 15, 20, 20. So 25, 15. And then you just hit continue and save. Back to your NPC list. Check the PDF. Now they have, it's a virtual copy of the Charles Remus that we had. Now I noticed that the talents aren't exactly right. You'd have to go in and change the talents, but you can do that too. It's not really meant to be importable, but it is something you may need to do if you create a character and then decide you want to add it to your NPC list. So we clear that search. And this character is basically a full-fledged character. You can manipulate their inventory. You can do whatever you want with them. While we're at it, let's talk about clothing. Clothing is interesting in that you can now do more with clothing. So let's say this ball cap that, who is this? Franz is wearing, right? Ball cap. Well, if you want to call that something special, you can rename that to green ball cap. And now it shows up as a green ball cap. Characters can change their own appearances. And where that's helpful is if you add clothing from the common armor list. Let's say you're going to add, let's say a scarf, and use a random color. Then that scarf shows up as a random color, a magenta scarf. But if the character really wanted a blue scarf, you could go blue. That's not blue. Wrong blue. Blue scarf, right? So you can do that. And then the other thing that you can do is when you're adding clothing, and let's find a helmet. And this goes on the head, so it's in the helmet area. So we have a helmet, we have a riot helmet, we have a hard hat, and a climbing helmet. So basically they have different armor values. Let's say you want to add some kind of helmet, like a police helmet, but not a riot helmet, just a regular police helmet that's not a riot helmet. You can add that to the character as a climbing helmet. Now the character has a climbing helmet, a sort of bluish, I guess, climbing helmet. But we really wanted that to be a police helmet. You can add police helmet and save it. And now that climbing helmet type is climbing helmet, but it's really a police helmet. So when you see it over here, it's a police helmet. So just because it's a climbing helmet doesn't mean you can't call it something else. And that's how you're meant to use these armor items. You use a basic thing. And you'll notice this scarf is actually a gorget. So it's not really a scarf at all. It's really a gorget because it's something that goes on location 3. But we're calling it a scarf. That way we don't have to create 6,000 clothing items. We don't have to have, a scarf and a gorget and a neck wrap and a whatever else. You don't have to have all that. You can just have a gorget, and then you can use the gorget however you like. Another thing that I've done recently is added something that is interesting. Let me go over here and find some gear. And we're going to look for some gear. And we're going to add this. This is a blacksmithing utility for toolkit. It's now 5.0 weight encumbrance. And it now indicates in red and says heavy underneath it. This is so that when the character says, wait a second, I'm way over encumbered, how did I get there? He can look up and see this big utility 4 toolkit in his backpack and say, oh, I must have utility 4 toolkit in my backpack. Maybe I should set that down somewhere, put it in the car. So that will definitely aid in finding that kind of stuff. And of course, you can always look at this levels here and see how much stuff you have. Another thing I added is, let's add a pack here, basket. Okay, so now this guy's carrying a basket and has a backpack, a lightweight backpack. Well, when you want to remove that, you can just press this button, it'll remove that and place it into your inventory. So now you have a lightweight pack and you have a basket somewhere. And if you want to put it back, you just delete the lightweight pack and go up here and do lightweight pack and save the pack. Now you have it back. That way you can, if you get an Alice pack and you add it, let's say you are going to add your Alice pack, we just take this off and add your Alice pack, and then you can just swap this old light pack over to another character. Let's put it in the, I'm logged in as the GM, so I can, anything in red means that the players can't put stuff there or take stuff out. So I throw that in there, right? So now the backpack is saved, even though we put it up here, and we can get rid of this backpack as well, and the basket. So it makes it a little easier to move things around. The other change that we did was we removed the books from the gear. So if you have gear, you'll notice that gear is a long list of gear that people have added and I've added. Everything that we've ever needed is listed in this gear thing. Toolkits, solar yard light, solid fuel hexi, whatever it was, we've added it to gear. And that stays in there as long as it's reasonable and we don't have a problem, it stays in the gear. But one of the problems is we've added a ton of books. And books were taking up too much of the gear list, so we've added books into their own list now. So now we have a list of books. And we have two types of books now. We have books, like this advanced med book, and we have an e-book, which is basically based on the encumbrance, just a little card you can put in an e-book reader. And the reason I did that is because e-books are becoming very common nowadays. So 10 years from now, they're probably going to be very common. And also characters can share e-books on an e-reader. So that makes it easier, but they will need an e-reader and batteries and power to use it. Books come in 4 different types now. You have a basic book, which is your low-end book. You have a advanced book, which is your BCS 11 to 20. And then you have an expert book. If it's a format 3 skill, you have an expert book. And that expert book will allow you to go from 20 plus. We have reference manuals. Reference manuals add to your BCS. This is a +2 reference manual. So if the character is doing advanced medical and they have time to look it up in the book, in other words, they're not trying to use Cardiacin or something, and they roll a literacy BCS, they can add +2 to their BCS in the skill. So advanced med +2. So if they have a BCS of 8, +2 manual gives them a 10. In addition, there's manuals. Manuals should be used sparingly, and they're difficult to use. Manuals, a BCS 12 manual basically gives anyone with this BCS and the prerequisites, in other words, first aid, lab tech, chemistry, gives them a BCS of 12 if they can spend time looking it up in the manual and they roll a literacy BCS. So let's say something happens and you don't have an advanced med character, but you have a manual, a BCS 12 manual, then a character can look up the ailment in the manual, make their literacy roll, and determine what's wrong with the person. That works out really good. But for advanced med, you're going to need a lot of prerequisites. So that's not always useful. But for something else like architecture, if a character has an architecture book and he can spend an hour standing outside a building looking at his architecture book to figure out if it's structurally stable, that'll work. Where that does help is if there's a skill that you guys need, and you just, some skills you'll notice that they don't have manuals because a, a bolo manual wouldn't be all that useful. What do you do? Spend 30 minutes in combat trying to figure out how to wind up your bolo. So there are not manuals for every skill, but there are manuals for a lot of skills, specifically crafting skills. The DAT, when you have NPCs, the minor NPCs that we've been looking at, you can add them to combat in one of two ways. You can add an NPC like this Franz guy, you can add them in combat, and now they're an enemy. Or you can add them as a player character over here, which would be funny because he's actually on both sides now. But you can add them here, and now this character is on, if we had two NPCs, it'd be better example, but this character is on both sides. So the NPCs can now be friendlies or they can be enemies. And where this might be helpful is GMs like to have characters who are more filled out as opponents. I personally use the opponent generator and just generate my opponents usually. Those are perfectly satisfying to fight with. But in some cases, you might have an NPC who is a NPC that the players have interacted with a lot, or even someone who was in their party at one time. And this allows you to use that character as an opponent. And some of the things, like they have a skill roll maker for their skills, which lists out all their skills, and you can calculate their BCSs for them, that kind of stuff. They're much more sophisticated because they also have an inventory where they have weapons that are in their hands or not. I mean, it really can be a big deal. So if a player wants to have that, or if a GM wants to have that level of detail, they can. Okay, that's it for now. Thank you, and hopefully you enjoy playing Aftermath.